Hello, folks. Welcome, welcome. All right. Tara made it. Arthur. Let me see. I'm going to get you all up here. Misha, Carolyn, Wyo Bob, Mary. All right. Good to see you all. Nice to see you again, Wyo Bob. You again, Misha. And um, let's see here. I'm just going to wait for a few more people to come in. If you guys haven't already done this, just go to the chat and try to leave a chat. Just say hello, say where you're from. Raise your hand if you have trouble finding the chat. Why, now I know why you're called Wyo Bob from Wyoming. I've briefly been to Wyoming. Um, okay. All right, Damien from Dublin. Good to see ya. Yeah. I like that. Happy fiddle dance. Hello, Mary from New York. Sorry, you guys are muted. I could maybe if it just depends on how big the group gets, but I think I'm going to keep you muted just for the moment. Hi, Cindy. A few other people coming in. Thanks for your patience. And if you're coming in, hey, Mary, if you're coming in, just say where you're from and your name and anything else you maybe tell us what you're working on fiddle music right now. What is the thing you are working on that's that's really your main thing? Let us know. Hey, Jim.
Hey, how are you, Jason?
Good.
This is Jim from San Francisco.
Good to see you.
You too.
See. Alrighty, alrighty. Got 19 people. It's pretty good. So I had some questions submitted in advance, and Yuri, if you're listening, please admit people to the waiting room as they come in. So I'm going to focus on starting to answer your questions.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Um, so let's see. So the first question was from Carolyn, and it's really not a question about fiddling per se. It's about it's about group lessons, and she was wondering what she asked. What are you covering in the beginner and intermediate group lessons? What are the sessions like, playing together or lesson format? And that's a good question. And so I wanted to start with that, just for those of you, some of you have been to a group lesson and some of you haven't. And as you know, if you've come to a group lesson, I'm still figuring it out. But what I'm trying to do is do some sort of lesson on a certain kind of practice or technique, and then break everybody and then have people just practice that thing and then come back to the main group. And so what I'm trying to do is make it less like an office hours like this and more like you get a chance to sit there and play something. And then we also experimented with having people play together in groups. And because you can't really play together in Zoom in a group, what we do is we do kind of things where you each play a thing. You can each do your own version of a thing. And so that's, to answer Caroline's question, what we're doing with the group lessons. Okay, so cool. Now, there's more to it and we're figuring it out, but does anybody have any questions just about group lessons or any suggestions or anything? You could either raise your hand or raise your virtual hand if you know how to do that, and I'll answer that. And then that's just how we'll do this office hours. I will answer a question and I'm going to ask you all for your feedback. All right, or ask you for follow-up questions. So it doesn't look like anybody has any questions about group lessons. So I'm going to move forward with the first question. And I'm going to start with a little bit more of like general and beginner questions and then do some slightly more advanced questions. So somebody named Sarah, I'm not sure if she's here or not. Um, So I'm gonna briefly answer her question. She asked, how can I relax shoulder tension? So a lot of times when people play, their shoulder gets tense, especially their right shoulder. And her question was, it was less of a question, more that she gets tense. She notices it gets tense and sore, and then it starts to affect her playing and her string crossing. And so what I would say to her is that it's really good that you notice it. And the next step is to put your attention on it. And so something that I'm also trying to work on is pausing throughout your practice. I have more issues with my back, but basically pausing to pay attention to your body. And no matter how long you've played, you can kind of develop bad habits with your body, and I do too sometimes. So the simple suggestion is every so often, maybe every 10 minutes, maybe even put down the fiddle, breathe, because people often forget to breathe, and then also do a few little things like shoulder rolls. That's good. And then I'll actually do like a forward bend. I'll kind of bend, like just try to touch my toes a little bit a few times, just because I have more of a back issue. But it's really good if you are noticing some sort of physical thing. You just have to take the next step and pay attention to it throughout a practice. Okay. Okay, so cool. So that's a question specific about shoulder tension, but it applies to other physical things. Does anybody have any follow-up questions? Let me know. Okay, doesn't look like it. Um, okay, cool. Thanks so far. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next question. So this is from Tara from North Carolina. Let's see, is Tara here? I thought I saw Tara come in. I'm gonna unmute you, Tara. Or maybe you unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hi, hi. Good to meet you. Good to
You
see you.
too.
Yeah. So you had a question about mute.
Right. So sometimes I use a mute to practice, and I'm wondering if the mute alters the height of the string. Yeah, exactly. So I notice that when I play double stops with a mute as without, it feels a little bit different, and I'm wondering if the mute has an effect, or does it alter the height of the string at all, so that when I play double stops with the mute, it's different than without.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks for asking. And I'll be honest, I have difficulty telling the difference, but it may be just they may. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen that the strings get kind of flattened by the mute a little bit. I think there might be something going on with that, but it's very hard for me to notice a big difference.
Mm,
But
okay.
what I do know, but I think you may be onto something, because when I use the mute, I'll sometimes notice a tuning issue. That sometimes the it sounds okay now, but sometimes in certain mutes, like I have a mute that's not as good, it'll affect the tuning. But in
Okay.
terms of the double stop angle, I think you should be able to do it. You may want to just put a little X, but keep going between the mute and taking it off would
Okay.
be one suggestion. But and do you use the mute a lot or
No, I don't.
okay, good.
Yeah. Just early in the morning when everyone's sleeping, I'll
Okay,
use the mute. But other than that, I really try not to use the mute.
good. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Because like so if it's a matter of practicing or not, if you have to use it to practice, then I say go ahead and use it, but you don't want to use it all the time because
Right.
then and I know you already I'm just saying that in general about
Yeah.
mute that if you get too used to it, it sort of becomes a crutch. And because it's kind of makes the tone so much softer, you can have a bad sound and you won't really correct your sound. So if you have this on all the time and then you take it off, you'll be like, it'll be really harsh. So it's a good idea to just use it,
Yeah.
sparingly. It's also kind of a cool effect. In orchestras, they'll actually like tell you to use the mute in certain points, and it gives a very cool
Oh,
effect. So it can be enjoyable too,
okay.
if you like. All right, cool. Now, does anybody else have any question? Thanks for your question, Tara. Does anybody else have a follow-up question on mutes?
Sure.
All right, I don't see anybody. Okay. All right, cool. We're moving on. I'm just gonna keep rolling and send a chat if you do have a question or if something was not clear. All right. So the next question I have is it's from Cindy from Blacksburg. It's a question about double stops. Let's see if we can find Cindy here. Cindy McKenzie, was that you? Let's see, you might have to unmute yourself.
There, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a little hoarse today.
Not a big horse, but a little horse.
Yeah, just
Okay.
a little raspy.
Okay. So Cindy, thanks for your question. Okay, maybe just tell it to us what it is about stops.
I'm trying to, learn the double stops, and I've watched your lesson and everything. So it basically, I'm getting comfortable with going on open strings, like, D and G together, A and D together, E and A together. Is that making sense so far? Yes.
So you can play the open string double stop.
But then I can also do, like, if I'm doing the open string, the D, like D to G, for instance, then I can do, go up the scale on D.
So let me pause you. So you can do this, like say you're playing G and D. You can do, okay. All right.
And I can't do it on the G string.
Okay.
Like, so if I'm doing D to G, D and G, and then try to go up the G string, my hand, I guess my finger just lays on the D string.
Yeah.
And it makes it completely like just scratching.
Gotcha. So what she's saying is that when she plays on the G string, the finger when on the G string is touching the open D, and that messes up the sound of the open D. Cindy, can you do it? Can you finger on the D and play open A? Or is it the same thing?
Same through all of them.
So I would suggest starting there to figure this out. And what you have to do is a kind of cheat away from the D. So I'll try to get really close here. So if I'm fingering on the D string, all right, I want to actually put my finger in between D and G strings so that I have plenty of space to get to that, to leave that open A. So it's a bit of a cheat, and you may not always be able to do it, but so can you guys see that? So my first finger, my index is between G and D. I'll just pluck for now. So now I can clearly play these. All right. Now there's a few other tips. So once you kind of get that sort of cheat, that little placement, before doing a double stop, do break up that double stop into two notes. So say you're your goal is to do D1 and open A. So what you would do is first start by just doing alternating. Maybe you have to work on it a little bit, and then you get it. And once you get it so that open A is sounding clear, then you try your double stop. Do that for each step. And then the next challenge will be to do two notes in a row. So don't do all four yet. What I would say is do maybe this. And sometimes putting a little pause in between, like different events, like adding a finger, can really help you get something. All right. So basically use those tips and then let me know how it goes. Let me know if you're able to clear up that sound. But if you start with single notes, you do that cheat away from the A and you kind of practice, you practice alternating between strings, breaking up the chords. I think it'll help you.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Thanks for your emails too. Um, so anyway, does anybody else have difficulty with double stops? Let's hear your question. Is it Henry?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Yeah.
I remember.
Very, very similar. Still just starting to get to them, but can pretty close to be doing the opening, but the same thing with the finger getting in the way.
Yeah.
But I'm also noticing my finger placement overall still needs improvement. So I'm assuming if finger placement on the strings properly is off, it's going to throw off the double stop, meaning maybe not always hitting on the tips of the fingers. Could that also cause an issue?
Yeah, because the more you hit on the tips, the more space you create. So that's really, are your nails cut on your left hand?
Yeah, I made sure one time I was practicing and went, oh yeah, I've got to keep up on that a lot better.
Yeah. I've recently discovered that you have to be very careful cutting your nails. It may seem obvious to all of you, but I was in a hurry, and the last few times I've just kind of rushed it, and it just becomes you just have hangnails for weeks. You just feel like I'm over 50 years old and I'm still winding up with hangnails. What's going on? But yeah, so that might be. I don't know if I said anything to help you, but that the more vertical you can get your fingers, there's an exception which I'll get to, but the more vertical you can get your fingers, the more space. It's logical because as you flatten them, they take up more space. As they're vertical, they come down on the tips, and then I would also add if you play very lightly, then you're even taking up less space because your finger dips down even less.
Okay.
So a big discovery I made after like playing for almost 40 years is that I could play with even less pressure than I thought. I could make it almost so that my finger barely touches the string. And what it means is that you can play a little bit more accurately, but also more quickly. Not that playing fast is the end all be all, but it's kind of something a lot of fiddlers are striving to do. And so the less you really can, with simple things like scales or just one or two notes, just practice just how little you lift and how little pressure you use. You know, just barely touching the string sometimes is all you need. And anyhow, so maybe that'll help you, Henry, with your double.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Let's see. I know there's some others. Yeah, okay, Arthur. You have to unmute yourself. Thank you.
I'm forever asking questions that I don't understand myself. But if I'm moving from, say, the one chord to the four chord rather than the one chord to, say, the five chord, do I need a different double stop? And how do I find them?
Yeah, okay. So for chords, let me see if I can find an easy way to explain this. So what do you mean? What is it meant by one chord, a four chord, and a five chord? And so I'll try to make this really simple. So let's say have a tune in the key of D. All right, which means it's the D major scale. So for each step of the scale, we can have a chord, and that's where the terms like 1, 2, 3, and 4 come from. So if we build a chord on the open D, that's the one chord. We build it on the fourth note, that's the four chord, and on the fifth note, that's the fifth chord. All right. So the one chord in D major, I'm going to give you the simplest possible chords. I always try to make chords as simple as possible for starters. So it would just be this open D and A. And feel free to, you all are muted, so if you feel like trying anything out with your fiddle, feel free. That's part of why we're doing it that way. So that is your one chord, and so the four chord, okay, is going to be a G. So if we start on D, E, F sharp, G. All right. So that means that our four chord will be a G chord, and so that's shape. I'm kind of doing this randomly. I'm sorry, but the four chord there would be open D and A1, and then the fifth chord is built on the A, and that's an A chord. Let me just go over all what those are, and then I'll get some follow-up questions, because I don't think this has been a clear explanation. So if we're in D, the one chord is D, the four chord is G, played open D and A1. Try that, everybody. Open D and A1. Why don't we do this? I'm going to go between the one chord and the four chord for D major. All right. So we have D, and then put the one down on A, and that's your G chord. Okay, so thanks for trying that, everybody. I think that the easiest way to get in this is to kind of just play with some chords. So the reason we have this 1-4-5 system, it's more used by guitarists, but it means that you can use the same sort of chord progressions as we go to different keys. So anyhow, so if the 5 chord would be D1 and open A. And why is it the 5 chord? It's the 5th step of the scale of D major. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A. Okay, so, and then what that means now is we can do chord progressions for D, and you could basically play chords for songs and tunes. So I apologize because it's sort of a haphazard explanation. It takes a long time to figure out how chords work, and I don't know. It would be nice to be able to just get it in like a 1-minute explanation, but it takes a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to pause and ask Arthur for some follow-up questions, and then see if anybody else has follow-up questions on chords. Yeah, Arthur.
That's fine. I just saw that somewhere, and it struck me that there's a number of possibilities for double stops, and you know what might one expect.
Yeah. So yeah, so here's a global way to look at double stops. You can just use them in a tune. You can start to add them to a song. Like, let's take a simple song like Bound Cabbage Down. Great tune to keep learning stuff from. And you could just add double stops to that. And then you don't have to think about chords and progressions and anything like that. You could just dive in, start messing around with adding open strings to tunes. And a way to really train yourself to be good at that is to add drone notes to scales. That was kind of like Cindy's question earlier. She was talking about playing scales with double stops. Well, for D major, you could do this. You would play the whole scale, but play D and A the whole time, like so. Okay. So, anyhow, so there's just adding double stops to tunes, and then there's adding double stops to chords. So, to make, basically we use double stops to play backup chords. So you'll see fiddle players do that with like chucks and things like, or like the chop, things like that. I prefer just kind of simple like hoedown. But then you could do like what a guitarist does if you use double stops in that way. You could be the backup person, okay? So, all right, very cool. So does anybody have any follow-up questions about chords and double stops? More on the chord angle and the backup angle. Okay, I'm just looking. Okay, I don't see any other questions. All right, very cool. So thanks Arthur for your question, and everybody else for your patience, and hope you're having a good time while you're here. So let's see, I answered Cindy's question. Okay, another double stop question from Misha. Misha, could you unmute yourself, please, and ask your question? For some reason, I cannot unmute you. There we go.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So when I'm just like everybody else here, learning double stops, or all the people that have asked the questions about them so far. And so I notice when I'm playing them, my D string is a lot louder than the A string or the G string, you know. So if I'm playing G and D or D and A, it's just like the D is like so much louder than the second string that I'm playing. Am I holding my bow wrong, or is that just natural happening?
Good question. Thank you. So probably what's happening is that, like you said in your question, the bow is probably a little bit unbalanced. It's probably favoring the D.
Okay.
And so what you have, but then the question is, how do you get it to where it's totally balanced?
Right.
So I'll just offer some tips. Yeah.
Thank you.
So one thing you can do, here's a very simple exercise that you can make more complex to practice harder things. But all it is doing single notes, like 2 Ds, 2 As, and then 4 double stops.
Okay.
Ds. And then that'll really bring that A to your awareness so that you don't shortchange the A, is the idea.
Okay.
So the other idea is to do very short bows when you're a beginner at double stops. Look how little bow I'm using.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using less than an inch.
Okay.
Meter. And then that'll help you. If you're doing longer bows, it becomes a harder calculation to keep it balanced the whole time if you do really short bows. So that'd be my main suggestion. Some other just kind of more beginner things you could apply to this would be like throwaway bow, and really try to do that with a double stop. So as some of you may have learned with me, like you can do this throwaway bow to really get a better sound. And then you could play little phrases from tunes like to help bring out the sound in a tune. Well, we can do the same little technique for double stops. And you could even do like a little pattern like tucka. So if you have your fiddle, give that a couple of tries. I muted you, Misha, so you can go ahead and do that. All right. Another one you can do is tremolo. It's also a very short bow, but a way to bring out your sound. try to enjoy the sound that you're making. I love sometimes just playing open strings, getting a nice sound. Even, you know, no matter whatever more complex things I do, I like to just return to a really nice, so you can do this with double stops. Return to like just the best sound you can make. Okay, so thanks for your question, Misha. Yeah, this is good. We're having a lot of related questions here. So let's see. There's somebody else who is named Fiddle N who asked a question, but I don't know if they're here or not. They might have a different name. Anybody attending named Fiddle N?
Hi, that's me, Nancy.
Thanks for your question. Do you want to ask it to everybody? By the way, I can't see your video, but it's all right if you don't want to show, but feel free
Yeah.
to.
I was asking you about the drones in the library.
Yes.
Is that a software program or an actual drone machine, or do you recommend
Yeah.
anything?
Okay, so those are drones that I made. So I made them just by using recording software, and I've just layered on the using my own violin. I made them myself, and then I add like a reverb effect, and just to kind of make it all washed out. But a fun thing that any of you could do, if you know how to use recording softwares, you could make your own drones too. You could even do them with you could even simply record something with your iPhone and then play it back. But that may not be what you want to do. Maybe you just want a nice sounding drone. So, I do have an app I recommend, but before recommending that, I want to say that just what's going on with the drones relates to what we're doing with double stops and chords. And basically all the drones are two notes. So if we're in D, the drone note will be D and A. So right now you could basically do a drone. You could be the drone app yourself just by doing this. So, and then so you can get the picture of this, a G drone would be G and D. And so for these drones, I use the root and the fifth. And without getting too much into theory, what's cool about that is that you can play major or minor scales with the same drone, okay? Why? For those of you who are music nerds like me, if you don't have the third in there, so D major is kind of defined by this second finger, the F sharp. If I make that a low second finger, it becomes minor. All right, so again, a D and A drone can be played with, you can play D major or minor scales with it. So then, Nancy, the app that I would recommend is something called iTabla. I'll pull it up real quick. So here it is on my phone. It's right on the second row. It's called iTabla, and I'll just pull it up real quick so you can see it. This is what it looks like. So I have it set to D, all right? And I just I turn on something called the Tanpura, and then I can play along with it. I'll usually use, I don't have it here, but I'll use an external speaker because I want it to be louder and kind of just have it be more bassy. But I've also used it with just my phone. And I don't know if there's a way, if there's another app out there that has other sounds. Like this has got just those Indian sounds. And I think it would be cool if there was a drone app that, you know, in my dreams, I would make something like this. I would make this, but have it have other kinds of drones like bagpipes or strings or organ. And then this also has a beat, has a tabla beat, which I'll sometimes use, but you know, again, like it would be cool to have the option to have other types of beats, but anyhow, so, and then one more thing about drones, Nancy, I like using an external box. Pull that up right now. I have this thing that's this weird box from India, and I like this because sometimes at night or just in general, I like to not have as much computers involved with my practicing. I just like to just play and read some sheet music or just work on technique, and I don't want to be looking at the computer too much. So this is kind of the same thing. It's a little bit more limited, but it's just a funny little box that makes the drones. And then I can change the root note here, so make different, you know. So anyhow, thanks for your question, Nancy. Do you have any follow-up questions?
No, I just, the drones have been so helpful, and it was just hard to find just the simple, lovely sounds that you have. But yeah, and I appreciate you putting them all on your website.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you could probably find some on if you just do a little searching on YouTube. I think people put up things like that. I've actually had the idea the other day to make an album of drones, like more like artistic kind of cool sounding drones, just to mix it up. So anyway, one of the things on the bucket list. Oh yeah, so Cindy, you have a follow-up question on drones. Unmute yourself and yeah.
Okay, this is probably going to sound really stupid, but I've never used your drones, and I wonder, why do you use them, and because you have all the music there, and so when I'm learning a tune, a lot of them I already know because I taught Irish dance for many years, but it just seems to me I don't understand what they're doing for you when I get everything I need from your recordings or other recordings or reading the music or whatever. So might be a stupid question or something I missed from the beginning. I don't know.
That's a really good question. I'll start by saying what you're doing is working for you, then keep doing it. It's not an essential thing. I happen to like it a lot, and a lot of students have found using them useful, and I'll say why, but yeah, there's so many amazing ways to practice. I wouldn't feel like you're missing some huge thing. But that said, one thing that drones are good for is helping you play in tune. So you can have the D drone going. I'm going to demonstrate with my drone box here. So I'm going to set the drone to D. And so for absolute beginners, I have this way of teaching that you can learn to play and tune every note using drones. I think it's pretty cool. So we'd start with open D, and then that's sort of testing to see, yeah, that's what something that is in tune should sound like. So you learn that, and then the next step would be to play the next step of the scale, which is D1, and feel free to play along. This is an E note, so I switch the drone to E. And now I can really tell I'm flat. It helps me figure out where the right pitch is. And I'm less dependent on a sticker or on an external tuner. I start to learn how it should sound. So I'm playing D1, and that's E. Another thing you can do is a little exercise with the E drone going. Maybe I'll do D1 to open D. And then I start to hear how that sounds, and I'm still learning to play that D1 in tune. And then we just repeat the process with each step of the scale. So the next step is D2, which is F sharp. So I switch the drone to F sharp. I won't do the whole scale, but I think you'll get the idea after this. But then we match that note precisely as possible. Maybe it's flat. That sounds better. And then once you feel confident or a little bit more confident, then you do little exercises. where you're alternating with that note. All right. So that's that's maybe the first reason I offer Cindy for playing with drones. The other is sort of like, I see it as a way to make playing very technical stuff more enjoyable. So a lot of people don't like scales, or you may have hear people complain about scales, but like one of my missions is to like bring out the fun and enjoyment in scales and the music in scales. And one way to do that is with the drones. So because what happens is that the I think when you play it with the drone, there's something that it just makes it. It's like having a backup part, a support part, except it's one note. It's not like a guitar changing chords. It's a very simple form of backup, but it does something to make it more musical. And so it basically, if you have a D drone, it makes playing a D major scale a lot more fun. All right. So there's that. And then related to that, you could play a little game where you have a D drone going. I call it Droneopoly. And you work on your scale, and then you switch to a tune. So let's say I'm in D. I have my D drone going, and I can work on a tune. And then I go back to my scale after I've practiced the tune. Maybe I want to switch to a minor scale, so I switch to D Dorian. And then I do a tune in D Dorian. Or Shady Grove. And then I go back to the scale. So, and then finally, like, there's something about playing with a drone that, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but sometimes you feel really self-conscious about your sound. You feel really like, I just don't sound good. And there's something about playing with a drone that helps people to relax a little bit and to kind of like feel better about their sound. And I can't really explain why, other than the fact is that you got a little bit of support there. All right. And one bonus reason to practice with drones, it's a great thing for getting into improvisation and learning to play, because you don't have a beat, you don't have a chord change, but you have this supporting tone. So is like, I'm starting to figure out how to teach improvisation, and the first steps that I'm teaching are all based on just a drone. So, and then coming up with different games and things you can practice with that. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful on that, on the why use drones. That's a really good question too. I really appreciate that. Thanks, Cindy. Okay, so does anybody have any follow-up questions on drones or on anything? Improvisation? Yeah, okay, Arthur, unmute yourself and...
Yeah. Is there any profit to maybe making a drone that's the triad, that's the entire chord, and playing against that?
That's a good idea. Yeah, you could do that, and then you'll say you had the triad, the D major triad. For those of you who haven't heard that term, that would be this. From the D major scale, we play the first, third, and fifth notes. So Arthur's suggesting we have a drone which uses all three of those. So basically, if I use a D drone, and this is D and A, I would add the F sharp. And that, so now I've kind of simulated your idea, Arthur. And then you could all play any tune in D major with this. If you know any simple tune and you feel like playing, just take a moment to play a little bit of like Bottom Cabbage Down or Kerfunkin, Arkansas Traveler, anything like that. But those would all work. Okay. So I hope that answers your question, but the drones don't have to be root in fifth. And in an Indian music where I sort of got the idea, they can use much stranger notes. But the reason I picked the root in a fifth is it's very open-ended and it allows you to play major and minor scales. So I did not want to make it, I wanted to make it that way so that you can reuse the same drones. Okay. Alrighty. So cool. Let's see. We have a few. We also have. It looks like we have some questions. I think Tara asked a question about, and she says an embarrassing question. What is the difference between chords and double stops? And it's not an embarrassing question. You know, stuff's confusing until it's not. So I kind of went into it already, but I'll just briefly say that they're kind of the same thing, except a chord it's just how you use it and how you think about it. But a chord is two notes, a double stop is two notes. They're same in that way. So any double stop could be a chord of a kind, but it's more that the chords are used as backup would be a simple way to look at it. And then when you're playing, just adding notes to a tune, we kind of think of those as double stops. So I don't know if that's a good enough answer for you, Tara, but that's just a little follow-up there. So let's see. So Steph at C, I'm looking at the chat now. He says, in the beats library, there's a jig bodhran. So I have this library of beats on FiddleHed, and there's some Irish beats. And I wanted to use the drum backing for jigs in 6/8, but this one sounds 4/4 and the count is 1 2 3 4. So you're correct, Steph. The thing is that I am incorrect in how I counted it in, but I counted it in a way that seemed to make it easy. I was just trying to make it easy to get in, but the proper way to count in for a 6/8 jig would be 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. So a jig is something like Kerfunken jig. 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. All right. So he's just asking about the kind of how you count in for a jig, which is 6/8. Okay, so I don't know if you're listening, Steph. I see your picture, but let me know if you have a follow-up question. You can unmute yourself. Okay, so let me see. Somebody else asked a question from Julian Blank. I'm often sliding away from chords. How do you correct that? Let me see. Are you there, Julian? Let's see if Julian is here. Could you just play me? Hi, could you play me and show me what you mean?
Just like sometimes I guess I'm not into the chord. I mean like I'm like slipping away or not like sticking to the chord. You see what I mean? Like the sound gets soapy or sloppy, not loud enough. I guess I'm moving my arms too much like here, or something should be closer to and little movements. I don't know.
Yeah, could you demonstrate a little bit, or you don't have to but if you want.
The thing is like doing the mistakes on purpose way. I don't know.
I think so. You're asking about kind of cleaning up the notes you're playing and like going across the strings. Like, are you saying that you sometimes have this sort of thing happen where you're going from a string like
Yeah, like this.
Got it. I was a little confused because you said chords and we were just talking about chords, but
strings.
Yeah, good question. Thanks. So now I think I understand your question. And I think that the way that here, what you can do to clean, there's a few really common things you can do to clean up your string changes and your fingering. And one is the thing that any music teacher will say, which is slow down. All right, play it slower, and you'll notice a huge that'll improvement in the precision. So we're talking about playing more precisely. So instead of like, we want, and the way to practice that is to do things slowly with little brief pauses. Like, if you're a total beginner, you could do like place the second, place the third. And then you just get quicker and you make those pauses shorter. I'm still doing little pauses, but I play faster, and eventually you'll have a cleaner sound with that. Same goes for string crossing. Like, a lot of times people are very sloppy with their string crossing. Like, and so what you do is you make it very deliberate. I call it stop and rock here. Like, switch the bow, place the finger. Even if you're more advanced, you can maybe get something out of just doing very minute, careful work like that. Open A to D. Yeah, go ahead, try it.
Yeah, I'll try that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I hope that helps you, Julian.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. So play slow, put little pauses in between, little tiny stops. All right, let's see. Mary asked, double stops provide a harmony. They do. So I'll just say that again. Mary asked, do double stops provide a harmony? And they basically do. You basically have harmony as a note, and there's different rules and complex rules of harmony that I don't fully understand, but basically harmony is another voice that fits with the main melody voice. Easy way to look at it. That's what a harmony is. And you can make your harmonies match the melody a lot, like, or you could make them, you could just have a drone note, and that's still a form of harmony. Okay? So, alrighty, let's see. Does anybody who hasn't spoken have a question, raise your hand. I want to try to get to anybody who hasn't had a chance to ask something. Just scanning here. Okay. All right. So, well, if there are no more questions, I think what I'll do is, oh yeah, sorry, Wyo Bob, unmute yourself, please.
So it's not really a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Earlier there was some talk about string interfering fingers, cleanly noting a note. And I went through like causing string buzz on an adjacent string, finger placement. Remember that at the beginning? I went through that when I got my first fiddle. The spacing at the nut was kind of narrow, probably standard. The action was extremely high at the nut. The strings were steel preludes, which was like trying to note a cheese grater wire. And I had no calluses on my fingertips. That was really tough. So I talked to somebody that really knew how to set up a fiddle, and I bought one from her. And the nut with the string spacing was about just shy of 2 millimeters wider. Action was considerably lower. The relief at the scoop was lower. By then I had calluses. So there's just a little bit more spacing in between the strings. Your calluses are a little bit hard. So instead of having a smushy fingertip, if you can get that callus to hit first and come straight down, and then not have, because you have high action, such a long ways to go to the fingerboard.
Yeah.
Because by the time you go to that long action, the rest of your finger is gonna hit the adjacent string.
Right. That's such a good point. Thanks. Yeah, it's something I forget about because my fiddles are set up fairly nicely, and I just kind of take it for granted. But a lot of beginning students may have a fiddle where high action thing is really challenging, really difficult, and what you basically need is to just lower the nut from what you're saying. Did you do that yourself, Bob, or did...
Well, I had my first fiddle was that way, and it's from the big store. So I ordered the second fiddle, and then I tore into the first one. I removed the relief, up in this area. It was a long, like 3 times the minimum recommended. I flattened the fingerboard. I made a new nut and dropped the action, and I took the action down at the bridge, and it just made that extra millimeter and the calluses. It just made all the difference in the world. No string interference.
You did it yourself? You took off the strings and kind of filed this nut part?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that's great. Wow. You could get that would be a good side hustle for you, is fixing up violin people.
My friends aren't going to let me near their fiddles because they're really, really good fiddles.
Oh.
I didn't figure I had a lot to lose on my original one. If I fouled it up, I'd send it back to Chris at the Bluegrass Shack and have her fix it.
Oh, where do you live? In Wyoming, right? What
Yeah.
town? What town?
Buffalo, North Central.
Oh, cool. Cool. Is there a lot of fiddle music out there?
There is a hotbed of fiddle and bluegrass music in Johnson County, Wyoming, yes.
Nice. Very cool. Well, that's really helpful. Thanks for sharing that because I think that having a decent instrument is so important, and a lot of people it's already hard enough to learn. You make it such a huge uphill battle if you don't even have a decent violin. I'm glad you were able to fix yours and get going.
Well, and if you're new, you don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you order from some big name and they say, well, this is what you need. And then you find out you play somebody else's fiddle. Oh my goodness, well, my fiddle's not like that.
Yeah.
And then they play your fiddle and says, holy smokes, the action's a little high. And a lot of beginners, they just don't know.
Right. That's a really good point. I really thanks for bringing it up and try to share that with others. As a teacher, I sometimes take certain things for granted, that just get an instrument and just start learning. I focus a lot on practicing and different things, and I forget that there's all these other like little hidden challenges, like with just how to have your fiddle set up, or how to get a decent fiddle, or how to maintain it. Even questions like how much rosin to use really are like turning in people's minds, and it's something I don't even think about or care about. I just put a little on when it feels like I need it. But anyhow, so thanks a lot for your question. Yeah, thanks, Bob. So let's see, I'll do one more pass. Does anybody else have a parting question? Okay, I see Sarah. Okay, there we go. Unmute yourself, Sarah.
Okay, hi everybody.
Hi.
You may have answered my question before. I had some trouble getting on because I don't know why, but I did. So my question I had written in an email was about
Shoulder tension.
shoulder tension, and you may have addressed it, but I missed it.
Okay, I'll say it real quick. I did. So basically, everybody's got physical things that they deal with, and what you have to do. My suggestion is, it's not a have to do. What I suggest is that you take time, like minutes, to pay attention to your body, like pause, breathe, do a few little things like roll your shoulders forward, backward, stretch side to side. Take like 30 seconds, and it'll allow you to practice for longer. And then do some forward bends, like touch your toes or your knees even, just bend, and kind of bring awareness to your body. And then I'll add something that I didn't say before, which is that what you can do is then start play a simple thing like an open D, and see if while you're playing that, you can still have even breath and still keep your shoulders down. still keep your back straight and relaxed. So that's the new thing I'm at. So thanks for asking, again. And then if you can relax here and keep your body relaxed here, with, then try it with a simple scale or something. And then ask, is my shoulder still, so as you do more complex music, you keep your attention on your body, and then at a certain point you let that go and you just get into whatever you're doing. Let's say you're doing Orange Blossom Special, whatever. And then you notice again your shoulders up. You just have to pause, put your attention on it, stretch, then start that process again to get back into it. A simple open D. And then so that step of playing something and keeping your attention on your body is like an integration step. You've relaxed your body. Now you're going to integrate it into the music. Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you for your question, Sarah. Okay, well, it looks like we're almost out of time. Are there any other questions? I'll keep answering but all right. Cindy? No, okay. Okay then. So oh yeah, go ahead, Cindy.
Sorry. Oh, just talking about the fiddle. Like what is, to get a good fiddle, how much money should you spend? I mean, obviously sky's the limit, but for normal people, like what could you get?
Yeah, don't think you have to break the bank to have a good fiddle, but don't spend $100 on a fiddle. Like you can make $100 fiddle and learn off of it. You can make it work, but I would say like it's such a work. If you're really sincere about doing this, I would spend like $400 if you can. And if you can't, then still do it. If all you can afford is a $200 fiddle, obviously try it. But just like I would say like $400, you can start to get something of quality. And it's just really, it's such a worthy investment, because if you start with a bad fiddle, and you will be more likely to be discouraged. And then it just pays many compounding dividends to have a good fiddle, because all that time you spend is going to be rewarded. So, but yeah, I can't, that's just a rough guess, Cindy. Like about $400, you can get something that's pretty playable in these days. So yeah. Okay, well, anybody else? Yeah, Sue. You have to unmute yourself. Sorry, Sue. There you go.
I wanted to know about the bow. How do you know if you have a good bow then?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure how to answer it. The bow does matter. It does actually, it does actually affect the sound. And you could, it's kind of a similar answer. I don't know what the minimum number is for a bow. Maybe like $100 to $150 minimum for a bow. But the bow does affect the sound. It does, and it's best to kind of try out a few bows. There's some online stores that that allow you to try things out. And I don't. While Bob mentioned a store, and I know that Fiddler Shop, they'll not only give you demos of stuff, but they'll allow you to have a pretty generous return policy. So if you buy a bow and it's not quite for you, you could return it for free and try out a different bow. So
I'm in Canada, so I can't get a lot of the sites that you have.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have trouble getting things here.
You have is there a fiddle shop near you that you could go?
There's a music shop, but yeah, just
try out some bows then.
Try there.
Yeah, I think that's a good call.
I just didn't know if they should be better than a fiddle. I'm playing a really old fiddle, so I don't even know if it's good or not.
Are the strings really old? Have you put new strings?
No, I've put new strings on it, and I've had a couple of people look at it. It was my great grandfather's, so I'm just trying to learn on that one. But the bow was given to me, and I don't know if sometimes the bad sound is me, the bow, my positioning.
Is the bow, does it have enough hair?
Oh, it's missing hair.
Yeah, it may need to be rehaired. If possible, take it somewhere and just have it somebody look at it, just to ask,
Okay.
does it
To
need
see if it's just a good quality.
ask somebody who does bow rehairing, is it worth rehairing it?
Okay.
And then they'll tell you. Just say, like, just be honest, is it worth it or should I buy a new bow? Would be a
Okay.
suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Do. It's kind of my weak point is gear and technical stuff, but I do know some stuff. Carolyn, you have a question. Unmute yourself, sorry. And by the way, it's not rude if you have to go. You can stay as long as you like.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Well, since you brought up Fiddler Shop, I thought I'd mention, I played violin growing up and then didn't touch it for 42 years. And I was traveling a lot, and I wanted to have, when I took this up again, I wanted to have an affordable violin I could keep at the place I was spending time. So I bought the concert violin from Fiddler Shop, and I was in Florida. I was able to visit them in person. It cost roughly roughly $400. I think the price has gone up. I absolutely love it. It put all my beginner violins to shame. And I've played guitar and I played violin as a kid, and the action just felt a little high, but I wasn't sure. And I called Pierre. He answered the phone personally. He said, bring it down. And for free, they lowered the action. He watched me play and customized the action. So I can't say enough great things about them.
Oh, cool. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. I know that they have a certain way that they keep their prices down. They have a lot of instruments made overseas, I think in China, but then what they do is they set them up in their Florida workshop. And so they all have like a little bit more customized feel, but that they're able to keep their prices low by that kind of combination of stuff. So
having seen them it was intimidating saying, should I really buy a violin online? But I was in Florida. I actually visited them. It's amazing customer service. They're amazing people. Pierre puts his heart and soul into it. When I went back to have the action adjusted, he had 5 customers looking at violins worth many thousands of dollars, and he took the time to help me with my little concert. So I can't say enough good things about them.
okay, thanks for sharing. Yeah. All righty. So I'm going to close up now, and I have a request, and then something. I might break you into groups if you like. So my request is, if you feel like writing me an email to tell me about how you like this office hours experience versus doing it on YouTube, any thoughts you have, just write jason@fiddlehead.com. That would be great. Just any feedback. If you don't have any feedback, don't worry about it. Zoom. Oh, that's Wild Bob's answer. Do you work for Zoom? Why do you have a Zoom hat? Anyway.
My daughter works for him down in Denver.
Oh, okay, cool. So you're a fan?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Alrighty. So yeah, if you have any thoughts on how it could be run better, and you don't want to say it in front of the group or whatever, just send me an email. And I still might do YouTube office hours. I'm not sure. I'm trying different things out. And so last thing I want to do is, for anybody who's interested and wants to hang out, I was just thinking I could break you into groups. Like I've done this in some of the group lessons, and you could just kind of meet some other fiddlers, If you don't feel like doing that, you can say goodbye. And if you do, I'm just going to give it a try. I'm going to break people into groups. I'm not going to participate. It's just an opportunity for you to say hello to another fiddler, say, hey, what's going on? You know, and maybe as a question to get you going is like, what's the biggest challenge you have as a music student right now, if you feel like chatting about that. Okay, so that's optional. If you feel like doing that, just hang out. I'm gonna break you into groups. This is the official goodbye, and then I'm gonna just, whoever's left, I'm gonna break you into groups. Okay, all right, but I just want to say thank you all. Deep bows. Your questions were all good questions. It helps me teach better. Thanks, Henry. Thanks, everybody. It'll be hard to say all your names. Go to FiddleHed.com for a progressive, step-by-step course outline, color-coded tabs, play-along tracks, sheet music, and much more. Thanks for watching the videography. Excellent. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.